welcome to another live session for mindfulness in ministry for the course Learn Your Ideal Customer. I am Coach Raquel, and my co-instructor Carl Marriott is also a part of this session. You won't hear him because he won't be speaking, but he's right here with us. And so now we're going to be where our program is coming to an end, and your final activity is will be for you to conduct a case study, to do the work to understand, learn, discover, and really get an insight into the lives and the thoughts and the minds of your ideal customer or client. And I'm going to be sharing some things with you. I'm starting with some notes from a book by John C. Maxwell, a #1 New York Times best-selling author. And it's very important what we're about to share with you, because you need to understand why we spoke about all the things we spoke about. We'd have spoken about recognizing your conversation in time, learning and discovering who you are and what you're passionate about, understanding how to, when you're generating versus when you're reacting, what we call above or below the line, um, recognizing, how, paying attention to how you're showing up. Those things are important before you even start to think about discovering somebody else, because this learning your customer begins with you. It begins with you because you attract, right? You attract something you desire. It's everything. You are the foundation of your brand. You are where you're the epicenter of your brand and your business. So you first have to understand yourself. So from the book How Successful People Think by John C. Maxwell, I want to share this with you. Why you should perceive the wisdom of big picture thinking. So what we're saying pretty much is learning and understanding your customer, your ideal customer. What it allows you to do, it empowers you to have big picture thinking. And what do we mean by that? Right? It means that you're able to bring scope for your brand. Remember, we talk about it in leaps, where you need to make sure that your brand is expansive. It can expand, it can grow from where you're at, right? It's expansive. In order to do that, you need big picture thinking. You can't be limited to your own thoughts, what you alone know. You have to learn and discover your client and understand where your clients are in order to have scope in what your brand is going to be offering to them. And the book and John C. Maxwell wrote, intuitively, you probably recognize big picture thinking as beneficial. Few people want to be closed minded. No one sets out to be that way. But just in case you're not completely convinced, consider several specific reasons why you should make the effort to become a better big picture thinker. And studying your customers will help you become a big picture thinker as you seek to satisfy or to resolve a need or a problem that they may have. One he speaks of here is big picture thinking allows you to lead. Big picture thinking keeps you on target. Big picture thinking allows you to see what others see. Big picture thinking promotes teamwork. Big picture thinking keeps you from being caught up in the mundane. Big picture thinking finally helps you to chart uncharted territory. And those things are important. Also, in learning who your customers are, one of the things you're going to learn, just as when you did part one of this course, you had to go and evaluate your own value systems. The same applies to your customers. When you do your customer discovery and you really get a chance to learn and discover your clients, what you get to do is to understand what they value. What they value is very, very important. And this information we're about to share with you is from the author Marsha Bench, from her book Career Coaching coaching and insider's guide. And here she speaks of three major value systems. Psychologist David McClelland has isolated three functional values: achievement, affiliation, and power. Each of us favors one over the other two as an intrinsic need in our work, in what we do. The first one is achievement, meeting or exceeding a standard of excellence and or improving one's own performance. Affiliation, establishing, maintaining, and avoiding disruption of close, friendly relationships with people. Power, having an influence or making an impact on others. Why is it so important to understand people's values? It's important and it's key because our value system is what influences our decision making skills. Our values influence that it's through our values that decisions are made. It influences our decision making skills. It's our values that determines the decisions we make. Okay, the choices we make, they're influenced by our value system. So it's very, very important. And finally, I'd like to share with you something from the Bible, because this is mindfulness and ministry, and you know we reference the Bible. So in Second Timothy 2 and verse 15 and 16, and it reads, study to shew thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. But shun profane and vain babblings, for they will increase into more ungodliness. If you're going to speak to people, you have to learn their language. You have to learn their idiosyncrasies. If you're going to bring a concept to a group of people and you want them to buy into it, and you want them to go into their pockets, or you want them to just co-sign you, then you have to learn what's important to them. You have to know the language they use when they're speaking. You have to study them so that when you show up, they can see that you also take an interest in them, and that what you're doing is not just about you, but it actually takes into account their challenges and what they're going through and what is important to them. And so now I'm going to be sharing with you what your research is going to cover. And this information is coming from information shared through Cornell University, through their program, their entrepreneurship program, sponsored by the Bank of America Institute for Women's Empowerment, and that for women's and entrepreneurship, sorry, at Cornell. So this is what pretty much your case study will be covering. Best practices for customer discovery. The goal, it reads, of customer discovery is to learn if you are able to meet or solve a need or desire for a set of prospective customers. The most challenging aspect of this process is avoiding confirmation bias, the tendency for humans to hear what they want to hear. In your discovery conversations, good customer discovery stays focused on getting the prospective customer to identify the most urgent problems in his or her life without mentioning your specific solution. And so here are the different steps that you will need to look at to make sure, and you need to answer these questions before you even start asking questions of your customers. The first thing is you need to identify your market segment of the prospective customers, and this again begins with you. What is your purpose? Who, and remember, we talk about your early emotional trauma, what you're seeking to heal from. And if you are in the first, if you've completed the first course, which is a requirement for this course, you would have gone through learning and understanding your early emotional challenges, traumas, and you'd have gone right through that to understand how it connects back to this. If you haven't done the course and you're doing this one now, please go and do that course first. So identify your market segment. Name the individuals by job. For example, name them by, be very specific. Be as specific as possible about the setting in which you find the prospective customers, paying attention to how the setting impacts what they see as a problem. Secondly, you need to develop your value proposition hypotheses. That is to determine specific jobs the person in your market segment does and the things they're responsible for. Find out what really matters in your prospective customers' reward system. Look for your prospective customers' pains, that is, the things that make it hard to get their job done. Find out about your prospective customers' gains, that is, the things that make them more effective in their jobs. Choose to focus your value proposition on one pain or gain. Value proposition hypotheses should be statements. The statement should reflect your assumption about the value proposition for a specific job title in the ecosystem of the customer. Use your hypothesis to inform the questions you will ask customers about their problems. As you refine your hypotheses, keep QRST in mind, that is quantifiable, relevant, specific, and testable criteria in mind. Third, you need to map out your ecosystem. Map out the customer's ecosystem to determine who you need to interview during your customer discovery. Consider roles that consider roles other than the end user. Who actually pays for the product? Who is the decision maker? Consider those who might be motivated to block the adoption of new products, services, or solutions. Use your network, business connections, and social media platforms to find prospective interviewees. Visit trade shows, expos, and conferences to meet other potential interviewees. And finally, you need to write your script. You're going to formulate your questions. How you introduce yourself is important when questioning prospective customers. Reassure them that you are not there to sell anything, but have a real interest in their wants and needs. Start with broad questions. At the end of the day, what does success in your job look like? When you think about getting to that success, what keeps you up at night? Things like questions like those. Once you get a sense of direction, the questions can get more specific. What makes something the customer mentioned difficult? Have you sought out and or tried out any solutions? Why do they work or not work? Right. So those are some of the things you can ask the potential customers. If you get to the point where the prospective customer is talking about their desired solutions, you want to test the urgency of the situation. So, for example, if a solution could be effective in removing the problem, what would be the immediate benefits? And also the long-term benefits. If you knew the solution existed, would you rank it a high, medium, or low priority to look into? Right? So it's important, and always try to do your conversations in person. Getting in front of the person allows you to read their body language and effectively adapt your approach on the fly. Video conferencing is the next best option, followed by phone. And for this course, we don't want you to do any by phone or email. So please, either video conferencing or you do it in person. That's our recommendation for you. How do you know if customer discovery is working? Well, there is a very basic litmus test you can use if you are doing customer discovery well. In summarizing the findings of your customer discovery work, can you define the problem of the customer without mentioning your product? So always check that, right? Can you define the problem of the customer without mentioning your product at all? So that's a good test for you to know if your customer discovery is working. And we're going to be sharing with you now snippets from interviews that we would have conducted with successful entrepreneurs. And we have author Chad Kenneller. He's a successful author and the author of the book Finding Happy. You can check that book out on findinghappybook.com.
I'll give you one story, because I think by nature, I think most of us when we grow up, we're tuned into the what I call the WIIFM radio station. The
Ah,
what's in it for me?
Oh, that's yes.
Our
Yes.
But because of our flesh, we have a selfish nature. It's funny. People used to actually think that the sun, the literal sun, revolved
revolves.
around revolved around the earth, because we're like, yeah, we're here. Everything must revolve around us, right?
Yes.
And we learn that earth revolves around the sun. And so I've learned in my relationship with God that my life needs to revolve around the sun, Jesus
Wow.
Christ. And so the more that I'm in tune with that, and the more that I realize that, the easier life is, the more joy I have in life. And so I'll share one story. And this is one of the keys that I put in the book, is that it's far better to give than to receive. Like
Yes.
we ultimately, and I know this because when I was young in my 20s, I wanted this and I wanted that and I wanted that. And I thought it would bring me happiness, and I would get it. And I'd be like, okay, I'm a little bit happier, but not really. How come? What's wrong? I thought I'm supposed to go achieve and get and receive, right?
Yes.
Receive. So I was in the Army one day, and my wife called me up and she said, hey, on the way home, will you pick me up some chicken, and I need some diapers? I was like, okay. So this was probably at like 4:15. I hadn't left yet, and I'm getting ready to go out the door, and I get a call from my commander. Hey, I need to talk to you for a minute. And now 45 minutes later, I'm finally going out the door. And as soon as I go out of the door, my phone starts vibrating in my pocket. And I know it's my wife. Hey, are you almost here? And I just have to give her the bad news, right? And so I'm already irritated. And now it's raining outside, and I have about a 5-minute walk to my car. Now, when you're in the military and you're in your uniform, you can't walk and talk on the phone. So if I was going to answer the phone, I would have to stand still and talk, which just means I'm going to get more wet. So I'm not answering my phone. And my wife's very persistent. She's like, I need to talk to him right now. So she's calling over and over and over. So by the time I get to my car, she's probably called me 10 times. And I finally get in the car and I answer. And she's like, where are you? And I said, I haven't left. I'm just now getting to the car to leave. And of course, she's hungry. And by now she called in this order. So the fries are going to be soggy. The chicken's going to be getting cold, and I'm irritated and she's irritated. So that's our state of mind as I drive and I go to Walgreens to get the diapers. So I pull up into Walgreens. I'm already in this frustrated mindset. And there's a guy kind of waiting by the door. You can tell he wants to ask people for something as they're walking in the door. And I see he's got his truck, and he's got the hood lifted up in his truck. And I look over and I see he's got his wife sitting in the truck holding a little puppy, and he's standing outside in the rain, like waiting for people to come into the store. And so I know he's going to ask me for something. I walk up and he says, hey, could you help me out? My radiator went out of my truck and I need to get it fixed. And a guy came by and said for $160, I could get it fixed. And my wife and I are just trying to get the truck fixed so we can continue on our journey to where we're going. And I'm like, get in here and grab some stuff, and I'll give you some money on the way out. So I go in and I find the diapers, and I've actually forgotten that I told him I'd help him out. And so I come out and I didn't get any extra money or anything. And he's waiting for me, and I see him and I go, oh, come with me to the car. Cause I'm thinking maybe I've got a few dollars in the car. Right. Mm-hmm. So I go to the car and I've got just a few, like 50 cents and change or something. And I'm like, I'm not just going to give this guy 50 cents. He needs $160. So let me go back in the store and buy a pack of gum and get $20 cash back, or give him a little bit. And so I go in the store and I see there's an ATM machine there. And I go, you know what? I'm going to go to the ATM machine. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, $40. I'm like, okay, I'll give him half. I'll give him $80. And as clear as day, I heard a voice in my head that says, when you pray to me, do you want me just to answer your prayers halfway? And I thought, no, sir. So I knew that was my clue to get the full 160. And I didn't want to, but I was being obedient. So I got $160 out of the ATM machine. I'm still irritated. I'm like, I'm hungry. But now I'm hangry, right? When you're hungry and you're angry, I'm hungry. Yes. And so I go and I give the guy $160, and he just looks at it and he says, how can I repay you? And gives me a hug. And I'm like, just get your truck fixed, and, God bless you and your wife. God's definitely looking out for you. Right.
Yes.
And I go to my car, and by now the woman that was in the car comes running over because she'd realized that I'd given them the full amount, and she has her puppy in her arms, and she comes over and I roll down the window, and, it's raining outside, and she reaches in and gives me a big hug and has tears in her eyes. And I'm like, oh, you're welcome. No big deal. And so I'm still kind of like irritated about the whole situation, but here's the key. Here's what I want everyone to get. Let's listen to this. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror, and I saw the husband and wife. The wife's holding the dog and her other arms around her husband, and he's got one arm around her, and he's got the 160, and he's holding it in the air,
Wow.
and they're jumping up and down, and they're spinning in circles, dancing in the rain. And when I
Wow.
saw that in my rearview mirror, I immediately, all my anger, all my frustration, everything melted away. The 160 didn't matter. The joy and the peace and the happiness that I felt in that moment was no money, no amount of money could ever buy that. No thing I could ever get would make me feel that way. And so as I was driving away, I thought to myself, wow, that was cool. And then later I heard this verse, and I don't remember the exact verse, but basically it talks about sometimes you and I may be entertaining angels unaware. And so I
Yes.
thought to myself, was this a test that was put in my life just to see if God could trust me to be obedient with finances? And, of course, I got home, and my wife, she's always been even more of a giver than me. She's like, how come you didn't give them more? They probably needed some money for gas.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like,
Oh,
and so
wow.
within minutes, we were just
Wow.
celebrating. And since that moment, we've had just financial blessing has just poured into our life. It's unexplainable.
Also, we have Joan Wright Good. She too is a successful author and entrepreneur businesswoman. You can check her out as well. She has a website and all of that.
Overcoming life issues, it's a process. Silence is a killer. I believe if you really and truly want to overcome, you can't keep your mouth shut. You cannot. You have to speak about it. If for some person speaking about it to their friends, some it's to a counselor, some it's to a pastor, some speak to themselves, you know. For me, I wanted to speak openly. One, because I was misunderstood. I'm still misunderstood by a lot of persons. Not to say I wanted to defend myself, because I'm not in the business of defending and trying to vindicate myself. God alone does that. But I wanted a certain understanding to come out. One, because I was in the public eye, and I felt the need to make some things a little bit clearer, some things that were ambiguous, to make them a little unambiguous. One. Two, because so many other persons that I know of, and because of this book, I didn't even know that so many other persons suffer with the same things. They go through the same thing, and they don't have a channel. They don't have a person that they can talk to. So I wanted an outlet. I didn't want to be a murder-suicide victim, and I didn't want to be a suicide victim either. I wanted to motivate others because I've seen it around me.
We also have Jarain, a young actor who's making moves in Hollywood. He had a role in the series, the very successful series Power.
You have to have faith in pursuing your goal. And a lot of people, I just read a statistic today that 87% of, I think it was Americans, are not happy, are not happy with,
Oh,
what
I'll
they're
help you
doing.
there.
And their job.
87% of persons are not engaged in their current.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a good feeling. Nothing remotely close to their passion. It's a very depressing thing to be in. And
Wow.
the reason for that is a lot of us, we don't have enough faith to actually go after what it is that we actually want to do. Because oftentimes what we actually want to do is what 90% of people aren't doing. So you feel even stupid, you feel silly going after it. And I tell you what, the people who make it big, all the Kevin Hart, the Rocks, all these people, they are a
Yeah.
part of the 10% or the 1% in the world that
1%.
actually that took the leap of faith to
Mhm.
do it. Steve Harvey, said that you have to
Yes,
leave, and that's so true.
you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do. And not just do you have to leave? You have to prepare to fail and
Yes.
fail
Yeah.
hard,
Yeah.
but fail
Exactly.
forward. Fail forward,
Yeah.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I like that. Fail
And here
forward.
Doreen is an example telling you how to do it. It would be remiss of me not to ask you, what was your experience on Power like? What was that experience like for you?
Raquel, it
All the
was
young men in Jamaica and actors in
exactly.
Jamaica looking up and thinking, oh my gosh, you got there. What was that like? Give us
It
a
was
view.
I always use this word, it was surreal. It was surreal. I could not believe it because I had started watching Power. As a young black actor, there are only few shows that meet a certain quality that you can look on and say, yeah, I want to learn from that guy. Yeah, I can see myself doing that. Yeah, man, I want to look like him. I want to have that profile. Oh, I love how he did that. There are only so much shows with black
Yeah.
male actors
Black
that are
leads that you
trained,
can admire.
yeah, exactly, that and
Yeah.
meet a certain standard. And I guess Power fell in. It was one of the few that fell into that bucket for me. So
Mhm.
I
Nice.
started watching it. And it was so surreal. Like, God, it's funny. Let me share a story with you. Right
Yes,
before,
please.
when at Normal Manley Airport, my mom dropped me off, and I asked her to pray for me. I asked her
Mm-hmm.
to pray for me because originally I was only contacted to be a background actor
Mm.
on in that episode. And I asked my mom to
Interesting.
pray for me. I asked my mom to pray for me. I was in the front seat of her car, and she prayed for me, and tears started running down my eyes. And me and her, we were just agreeing. I was agreeing with what she was saying. She was agreeing with what I was saying. And then I left, and I went on the plane, and I went to shoot the scene. And on set, on
Mm-hmm.
set, a, a production assistant just pointed on me, and she said, "You come here."
Mm.
And that in the scene that I'm in, I got camera time. I had interaction with the
Wow.
principal cast.
Wonderful.
I got interaction with the principal cast because I was bumped up on set. I was bumped
Jeez.
up. I was on set, and that was favor out of all the male extras that were there. The PA hand pointed me and said, "You come here." And then I went
Wow.
there, and then before I
I
know it,
love it. Love it.
I was standing behind Tommy. Tommy is the main one of the main characters in the show. I was there interacting with Ghost. I was treated like a principal cast member. People were putting makeup on my face, and then there was a
Hmm.
camera lens right on me, right on
Hmm.
me. And then
Wonderful.
I got interaction with Tariq, and then I was talking with them. I got to
Okay.
talk. I got to talk to Ghost. I got to talk to Tommy. You know, I'm there with them, and I'm standing right behind them. Even one of the actresses that I looked up to, that I really admire. She hugged me on set, and she was talking to me. She's like, "Where are you from, baby?" Her name is she's from Love and Basketball, and I'm not sure if you know that classic.
Sana
Okay.
Lathan?
Not Sanaa Lathan. The mother, the girl who plays the mother of Sanaa Lathan's the love interest. The male, the woman who played Debbie Morgan, I
Yeah.
believe. They
Okay.
Okay.
call her Auntie Debbie. I'm here speaking with this lady, and she hugs me.
Wow.
Wow.
She hugs me, and I was like, look at that, and
That's a
I'm
huge
there walking with,
accomplishment.
yeah, I'm there
That's a
walking with
win.
Lala. I'm there
Hmm.
walking with Lala, Notori, and in the scene, I get a decent amount of camera time. My best friend, he calculated it. He was like, "Yo, you got about such and such seconds of
Wonderful.
camera time, bro." And I'm telling you
That's a
exactly.
big
I didn't
deal.
even I didn't even think of it that way,
Go,
but
Jermaine. Go, Jermaine.
That's
and
a big deal.
so to answer your question, it was just sublime. It was just it was kind of like let me not even say that, but it was a surreal experience. I could not believe it. The show that
Wonderful.
I've been watching, and it's funny, it's funny. Be very careful what people speak over your life. You hear
Oh,
me? Be
yes.
very careful what people speak over my life, because it's so funny. From ever since before I even started acting school, people would say that
Yes.
you look like the guy on Power. You look like the
Yes.
guy on
Wow.
Power.
Look
You
at
do.
that.
And
Actually, you
it's
do.
funny,
You
yeah.
do.
Look at
You do.
that.
And then and then thanks, Keith. And then it's so funny that here I am
You do,
walking
man.
literally behind the guy, interacting with the guy, and then I'm playing a cousin of the guy, because that's what I got
Wow.
bumped up to, a cousin in the family.
Oh,
And
Because
I
you
even
look
man.
had
like him.
yeah, I even had a name in the show. I didn't get my credit what I should have gotten, but it's fine, because what happened was the guy who was supposed to play that character, he didn't show up on set on the day, and
Hmm.
then they bumped me up right there and then, and that's
The
just the
guy to
favor of God.
play that role showed up that day. That was you.
Yeah.
That was you.
Yeah.
And also we have Garfield Burford, who is a very successful and well-known Caribbean journalist, who currently heads the news department division in Antigua with at the government media company, government broadcasting company there.
In mathematics, there's a concept of a common denominator. So no matter what the numbers are, there's a common denominator. In other words, something that always runs as a thread throughout everything that can be used to essentially define everything. Everything is an anchor around that. Your anchor has to be who you are, who you are,
That's it.
who your inner self is. And I think
Yeah.
that's, in other words, that inner self then determines whether, for example, you see the glass as half empty or as half full. And I think that's a critical point. In other words, what that comes to, whether you see the glass as half full or as half empty, It is a matter of purely your perspective, purely your mindset, purely your vista on life, what prism through which you view life. That is what determines what essentially how your outlook is on life. That comes, as I said, purely from inside. How do you cultivate that inner strength, conviction,
That's my
commitment?
next thing, because I'll tell you this. I did not really know who I was until 2016. Okay, and it's not that I was driven by the circumstances and the things that were happening to me. And I think what happens is, especially when you come from a place of survival and you're constantly on this survival track, I now understand how my motivation was anchored in that. And so a lot of persons are motivated by their need.
Put it
But
this
it
way,
didn't
I
have
think.
such a great self-concept so early, sixth form.
Right. I think I was very clear from that. Perhaps it might be my family upbringing. Perhaps it might be my strong faith, and perhaps an amalgam of both. But I think background is important, and I think that I was able to have that from my family background, from a very strong, stable family, especially a mother figure who was extraordinarily strong in terms of cultivating that sense of self-worth, self-determination,
Okay.
and so on. And then, of course, my faith would have been an immense anchor to really reinforce that, to be the tether to make sure that is tied together. So with that, and of course, for my own reading, for my own research, I've done a lot of reading from a very early age, especially on great figures throughout history. And everybody who knows me knows I talk about Alexander the Great a lot.
Yes, you did.
And he was one of the persons who, throughout history, apart from his military genius, apart from the fact that he was one of the greatest military minds the world has ever seen, to such an extent that 2,400 years later, his methods are still being taught in military academies across the world, including the Great West Point. Apart from the fact that he was a military genius, it was his great sense of self-worth, self-determination that allowed him to stand out from his compeers. What did it come down to? In other words, from a very early age, his mother instilled in him, that's Olympias, instilled in him that he was a son of a god, the son of Zeus. And that drove his level of confidence, his level of self-worth, self-determination, that drove him to be the best that he could possibly have been. What he was able to do was to use that self-determination, the concept of a strong self, to really drive him to be as good as any and better than many. He has to be credited for developing that strong sense of self, that strong sense of self-worth, strong sense of self-determination. And that was what drove him to be the greatest, in my book, the greatest military commander the world has ever seen. And I'm putting him in with Genghis Khan and Hannibal Barca and all of those.
You're well read.
Well, I tried.
Which is
but
a good thing.
Right, but what he was able to do, and so in other words, for me to declare him, in my view, the best, greatest military mind the world has ever seen, is not an easy. In other words, it's not a fluke. In other words, I'm very fastidious in that. It is because I think that he was able to mix and mingle not just great military genius, but a sense of self-worth, a sense of almost invincibility. In other words, he believed in his dreams, he pushed for them, he worked hard at them, and he was convinced that nothing was going to stop him from accomplishing what he wanted to do. So in other words, I raise the example of Alexander to say that was the kind of ethos, that's the kind of spirit that drives my own pursuits. In other words, nothing is going to stop me from accomplishing what I want to do, and no extraneous factor, no exogenous circumstances are going to allow me to not be who I want to be.
It is our hope that this will help you understand the value of this course and what you'll be going through, discovering self, purpose, and as well as discovering as well as customer discovery, understanding your customer and what they're about. So it's very, very important for you to do that in order to be successful in establishing your brand, a brand that will be profitable, relevant, and a brand that will last, will become timeless, and will last through time, right? So this is where we now end this session, and this will be our last live session with you, but you're going to be conducting your case study, and then we're going to look at that, and hopefully, well, we're confident that if you do it well and you follow the guidelines that we've set, that this will be very, very helpful and critical to you as you seek to develop and establish your brand. So thank you so much for joining me on this live session. We wish you all the very best. And this is where we end. We want to say a very special thank you to Cornell University, John C. Maxwell, Marsha Bench, and also the authors of the Bible. Those were the sources that we used in this session. Thank you so much. I'm Coach Raquel. Thank you to my co-instructor, Minister Merritt, and we wish you all the best as you seek to achieve divine success. Thank you.